Okay, welcome to another video of Labbing It. In our previous video, we configured our Ubuntu server and set up our mount points to our devices, our logical volumes, and we also configured up the permissions on that Ubuntu server. So now it's been primed and ready for access into Veeam, so we can create a Veeam Linux hardened repository. So that's the plan for this video. So we'll connect up to the repository, we'll use the single-use credentials, we'll configure, that should not say server, that should say configure scale out repository, and we'll also enable immutability. So let's get stuck into it. Okay, so we're back in our Veeam server. Now I'm just going to go to our backup jobs. We're closing in on 10 p.m., which is the kickoff point of our nightly backup. So I'm just going to quickly just disable those, because the plan will be is to probably start afresh on these backups and point to the new repository. But we'll see how we go. The purpose of this video is just to create the repository. So let's do that now. So the way that I go about accessing or getting access to a Linux hardened repository is through manage servers first. And so what I do is add a server, and it's going to ask me what type of server. It's a Linux server. And now DNS, I need to update DNS. So melin rep01, which I believe, look here, is 10.15. Just double check that we can ping it and there's nothing wrong with the network. Yep, all good. Let's just quickly head over here and add an A record for this server. So melin rep01 and give it an IP address 10.15 and shoot back into here. Let's actually just do another ping test. Ping melin rep 01.jt airlines.internal. It's a bit of a mouthful, but that is now responding via the DNS name. So melin rep 01.jt airlines.internal. Now this is where it's a little bit different to a normal connection to a Linux server. We will be adding an account, but we are using the single-use credentials. So essentially all this is doing is that we're going to pass through some credentials one time only. So that is the rep user account that we created in our previous video when we created the Linux server. And essentially what that's going to do is create a certificate-based authentication thereafter. So we don't need these credentials anymore than at this particular time. Now, if we need to do any reconfiguration with this particular Linux server, we have to pass these credentials again, and we may need to re-enable sudo access to the rep user account if we do need to make some changes. But for now, single-use credentials, and the user account is rep user. Add in the password, and I've always found I've had to just force the update of this account to sudo level, even though that the account is in the sudos group. So we'll go OK, and let's click next and see what happens. Okay, so it's can see the server. Do we trust it? Yes. And now that transport services, the data mover services, is going to be applied to this server. That's the only reason why we need to enable root access for rep user. Here we go, that data mover service is getting installed. Well, this is awesome, working first time. That's what I like to see. So just remember, this is not, we're not configuring a repository as of yet. Just configuring up a Linux server to our Veeam environment. And then we can use this Linux server for various options within Veeam, but it's only going to be a repository server. That's all it can be, given the fact that we use single-use credentials. Now, seemingly, should be happy. Oh yeah, looks like it's happy. Finish. Okay, so now we can see our Linux host right here in our managed services. So now we just jump up the queue here and we can add a repository. So add a backup repository. Now it's a direct attached storage, so it's directly attached storage to this Linux server. So we're happy with this option. It is a Linux server. Now we give it a name. So we can call this maybe Veeam Hardened repository 1. As good a name as any. Now it's only giving us this server as the option to configure because it's the only Linux server we have available to us. And what I normally do is I just hit the populate button and hopefully we'll see those two mount points available to us. There they are there, right in the middle. SDB and SDC, repo 1, repo 2. So we'll start with repo 1. Actually, you know what I might do? I think I might change the name. Try and get this naming convention a little bit better than just mucking around and putting whatever I feel like. Oh, this screen tear is really annoying. So Veeam Hardened repository. Let's reference this server for which it is located on, repo 1. Just in case we get another server. Let's see if I should, and that makes no difference. Okay, next. And we'll go to SDB. And then it's just going to come up, okay, how do you want to store this? So I might call this in conjunction with the name, I suppose. VHR. VHR Berlin Rep 01. Maybe we'll go with that type of convention. I will enable XFS fast cloning. So this is the comparison to REFS with block cloning technology. We have fast cloning technology in Linux. And I'm going to make backups immutable. So 7 days is the minimum. Now, in a probable production environment, if you're setting this repository server up for the first time, my recommendation would not be to enable immutability straight off the bat until you've got all your backups all configured exactly the way you want them to. And then once you're happy, flick the immutability and away you go. I might use per machine backup files. Geez, that screen tearing is annoying. Let's double check and make sure that that's okay. So every virtual machine targeting this repository will have its own backup file, even if it's a part of a backup job with 20 other virtual machines. and we'll be happy with that. The mount service, so that's just used when we are restoring items from within our guest virtual machine, so any like guest files or application items. Those restores will be mounted onto this server temporarily whilst we retrieve that data. So the VBR server is the only possible server for that. We'll leave it as is, the instant recovery right cache folder. So if we were to do an instant recovery of a virtual machine, I think I've mentioned this before, if we're not going to use the repository to write any changes when we're doing an instant recovery, those changes will then be wrote to this particular folder on MelVBR. And that's looking good. Beautiful. Now I'm going to do, I might just go into properties and I might just go just like that. And well, that's going to be a problem now because it's the same server, isn't it? We're going to make another. Anyways, okay, doesn't matter. Linux, maybe I'll just call it O2. That'd be the best way to go. Using the same server, we'll populate, and now we'll target the other mount point. Go. And I think what we did here was VHR O2. Same options. Because we're going to put these two repositories into a sober, a scale out backup repository, and apply. Next. And finish. So now we have those. So these could be, right at this stage, could be used for as targets for any backup job. But what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go down a little bit and create a scale out repository. So basically this is going to pull those two repositories together and create one logical repository. We use the scale out repository for a few other things as well, as in, for instance, if we're going to offload our backups into capacity tier, into public cloud, we need to use a scale out repository for that purpose. So I'll just go Veeam Linux, just go like that. Would be happy? No, I didn't think it would be. We'll just leave it as that. We call it sober. Scale out backup repository. We'll add those two tiers in and click OK. And this is the recommended option for a scale out repository. So I'm happy with that. And data locality, the explanation here is pretty good, but basically it's going to try and keep backup chains together. in order to provide a safety net in case we lost one of the repositories in our scale out repository. So if the O2 one went offline, we might lose some backups, but as long as we've got data locality checked, Veeam's going to do its best to keep all backup chains of each backup job together on the same repository. Alternatively, we can go performance, and we'll get a bit of a performance boost if we store our backup files, our incremental backups, so forth, across both of the repositories in our SOBA. So next, we don't need to do anything here at this stage. We'll definitely look at this at a later stage, but we have obviously the ability to send off our backups to say AWS or Azure. For now, we'll just leave that as is and hit apply. And we're done. So yeah, so that's our scale out repository. It's got a terabyte in size. Still see those repositories here. We can't use them, or we can't target them for backup jobs, because they're now part of this SOBA. So if we come in here, let's create a test backup job. So if we call it maybe immutable backups, and let's just use a test virtual machine. I've already backed this up in another job. Set the retention policy for 14 days. Immutability set for 7 days on the repository, so that fits okay. As long as we've got the synthetic full happening, that's not going to be an issue with targeting our Veeam hardened repository. And synthetic full, and I'll just turn off storage snapshots. Play next. Let's enable guest operating system, guest application aware processing, and provide some credentials. So we've done all this before in a previous video, and run the job. And I think actually we won't run it. Yeah, we will run it, and we'll run it after the simple backups. But I am going to run that job right now. So let's see how that goes. Might just time lapse this. This might take about 5-10 minutes, and we'll see it at its completion. Right, so that is completed, and sorry, I've just changed the screen, but yeah, that completed successfully. So what we can do now is come into our backups. We can see our immutable backup job now with meldc2 as one of the virtual machines contained in the backup. And if we just go to the properties here of the job, we can see what virtual machines are targeted into this job. So just the one server, and we can see all the restore points. So we've got a full backup. And if we just look across here, and we can see that this this backup is going to be immutable until the 19th of the 12th. Now, that's true for the current circumstance, but what's going to happen, we're going to have a few additional daily backups, incremental backups configured, and essentially these actually do not become available for deletion until the active backup chain is complete. So on the Saturday, we're going to get a brand new full backup. So technically, that's when the new backup chain starts. So that would render any backups prior to Saturday as inactive, so a non-active backup chain. So for the current settings, that means that these files will be deleted probably on time. But if we had different set of settings whereby the mutable period was, say, 20 days or 30 days or something to that effect, and we might have a retention period of 60 days, that might change. And the way that we might do GFS or our synthetic fulls might mean that some of our immutable backups will be held longer until they become inactive, and the whole chain becomes inactive. So right now this backup file is in an active backup chain, but if I did not create another full backup until, say, maybe the 25th of December, not the 19th of December, this would be considered active all the way until the 25th of December. Therefore, this immutable, whilst we set apply for 7 days, would actually be around until at least the 25th of December. So just something to be mindful of when using immutability. But let's do one thing. Let's go delete from disk. Let's just test the theory out. And exactly what we want to see. Unable to delete. Backup files can be deleted after the 19th of the 12th, 2022. So that just shows us how immutability works. It also means we were to log into our repository server, and now, well, we can't really do much with repadmin anyways because they can't see the repositories. So let's have a look. That's just going to get permission denied. So I think if we do exit, and if we log in with rep user, this user is still a sudo account. So if we go cd mount rep repo1, and now we can see, yeah, probably my Linux skills here a little lacking, and let's go full length here. I'm not sure why I have to do this, but mutable backups. There we go. So we've got that VBK file. Okay. Sorry, I just paused the video for a sec. I was just looking for a command to remove files. So if I went rm-v, I don't know if I need to do sudo. Do I need to do sudo? Maybe sudo rm-v ldc2, just tabbed. I don't know if that means it's going to allow me to. So for some reason it doesn't autofill what you're supposed to see on the screen. No, it doesn't like it. I might have to just go mldc2.vm 2022-12 12t221255 score 50fc.vbk and operation not permitted. So that's what we want to see. So I can't even delete it straight up with a sudo account in Ubuntu. So I'm kind of happy with that. I think that process has worked really well. Like I said, I've done this a few times for some of my customers of late. Can use other versions of Linux as mentioned before. I seem to see Ubuntu or Red Hat as probably the common ones that I've used. But yeah, that's immutable backups for now. We'll probably do a little bit more with this later down the track, but for now, hopefully that's been really helpful for anybody out there that's trying to set this up for the first time. Thanks for watching.